Hello everyone, in this video I will show you how to install Docker in CentOS. So for installing Docker in CentOS, we need CentOS latest operating systems. It can be 7 or 8 and OS should be configured with CentOS extras repository. And we will be using AWS as a cloud platform. So you should have AWS account, and we will be using CentOS AMI. Instance type will be T2 Micro, which is a free tier instance which Amazon offers for all our testing and practice. And you also will require a key pair. Hello guys, if you see, I am currently logged into my AWS account. I am in North Virginia. So I'll go ahead and provision EC2 instance. Select EC2, launch instance, click on community AMIs, CentOS. I'll select this CentOS 7.5 private, select. So select T2 Micro, which is Amazon's free tier eligible instance. So for our demo, all of these default settings will work, and so I'm going ahead with all the default values. I'll try to make a separate video with all of these options explained in detail. So 10 GB storage, EBS volume should be fine. Tags, I'll name this instance as Docker demo. Security details. So security group is like a watchman, guys. Okay, like just like we have a watchman at all the offices, shopping malls, or for our houses and all, right, apartments. So the main purpose of watchman is to allow authorized people to enter into our building, right? So security group also does the same thing. So whatever the ports that we are allowing on a given source, only those IPs are allowed, or only those source traffic is allowed. Okay, so let me go ahead and create a new security group. I'll call it Docker demo SG. Okay, and description, it is always a good practice to provide description so that others, when they see it, they will understand the purpose of this security group is. So I'll name this as allow Docker traffic. Okay. So for now, I'll select 22 port and 0.0.0.0 by 0. So for the people, whoever is doing this for the first time, you might get confused, and sometimes you will be selecting the default security group. Make sure you either create the new one, or this source should always be 0.0.0 by 0. So the main purpose of this is that anyone across the globe, whoever has internet access, can reach out to our EC2 instance on the port 22. That's the whole idea of this source here. Okay, since we are testing, it is okay, but in the production environments, in the real-time projects and all, we will not be using this. It is a security concern. Okay, this should always be some IP address or a range of IP address. Review, and here is a quick overview of all the settings that we have selected. Then I'll go ahead and select launch. So here, those who are doing it for the first time, you have an option to create your own key pair. Okay, so but in this case, I'll select the latest, the existing one which I already have. and I'm acknowledging that I already have this key pair with me. Remember, if you are selecting some existing key pair and if you don't have, so guys, see here, you have the instance up and running. So select the instance, and you have the IP address. So every instance has two different IP addresses. One is a public IPv4, another is a private IPv4. So in our case, we will use public IP because we are trying to log into the instance from outside the network, outside the AWS network. So copy this. So selection, by clicking this square box here, it will copy the IP address for you. Just copy it. Open PuTTY in your laptop and select the IP address here. Okay. So now I already have the key pair. So I'll say SSH auth browse, and I have my key pair here which I've selected, and I'll change the color so that you guys can see the text that I'm typing clearly. And also I'm changing the size of the font. So I have the access now, login as. Now the username for the CentOS AMI is CentOS. Okay. So if you are launching Amazon Linux, the username will be ec2-user. If it is a Ubuntu instance, it will be Ubuntu. For CentOS, the default username is CentOS. Okay. So if you see here, I have already logged into my CentOS. Now I'll become a root user. Okay. To become a root user, you type sudo su-. If you see, I have logged into my server as a root user. Now we should verify the prerequisites like we discussed before. The first thing is that verify if the operating system that we are running on is 7 or greater than 7. So cat/etc Red Hat -release. If you see here, we are on CentOS Linux release 7.5. So it is supported now. And the next thing is verify if you have the extras repo configured. Yum repo list. So the command yum repo list will give us the details of the repositories configured in our host. It's taking time. Yeah. So if you look at here, looks like the extras package for Enterprise Linux 7 is already configured. So you don't have to do it, but still, for those who don't have this repository configured, I'm executing the command which you can try in your servers. So yum install. I'm going to install utils. Okay. So the main purpose of utils is that it gives us mconfig manager. So mconfig manager helps in stable repositories whenever you are installing or configuring any new repository. Not sure why it is taking time, but yeah, it's coming up. Looks like some issue with the network. So it says connection timeout after these seconds, but let's wait, let's see. Sometimes maybe the repository, the URL it is trying to download could have a problem, and it always tries the alternative links. Yes, looks like it's done, it is installed. So usually when it has different URLs configured, it tries to download from different sources. If one source is not responding, it will try to download from the other sources. So the command has been successfully executed, and the repository is configured. Now let's go ahead and install the Docker. So I have the command. Just a moment. You see here, what I'm doing now is that I'm going to configure the Docker repository. Okay, so Docker-CE, where CE stands for Community Edition, says that config manager --add repo, meaning I'm going to add the repository to this host, and the repository is in this given URL. So executing this command will download the repositories, and it will be stored in the default yum repository location, which is etc/m.repos.d. So we have just configured the repositories. Let's execute the previous command, which is yum repo list, where you will see Docker repository configured. You see this Docker-CE has been configured. If you just scroll up and view the output of the command that we have executed before, which is yum repo list here, and carefully observe, you will not have the Docker repository configured. Okay, so what I did is that I have just downloaded the repositories from this location, and you see that Docker repository is enabled. Now to install Docker, the command is just like any other softwares that you install, yum install Docker-CE, meaning we are installing the community edition of Docker along with Docker-CE-CLI, which is a CLI utility, and containerd.io. So these are the three packages that you should install. Earlier, if you go ahead and install yum install Docker-CE, these components used to get installed automatically, but now you need to explicitly mention these names here. Press enter. And if you look at here, we are installing three main packages, and the rest of them are dependencies. These dependencies are being downloaded from different repositories, from Docker-CE, some extras, and they are using some base repositories as well. So total there are 7 dependent packages and 14 dependent packages. So let's go ahead and say yes and enter. Done. So we have successfully installed Docker, but how do we verify if the Docker is successfully installed and everything? So like Docker has a simple architecture, client server architecture. So when you type Docker, if Docker is installed, you will see all of these commands getting executed. If Docker is not installed, it will give you an error stating that Docker command not found. So again, you will have to redo the installations. But when you see this output, meaning you have successfully installed Docker on your host. So, but which version of Docker did we install? So while installing the software, I haven't mentioned which version of Docker I need, right? So when you're executing the command yum install docker-ce, whichever is the latest version available, the general available latest version will be downloaded. Okay. So, but how will you install the older version? Sometimes the developers, while you are working in the organizations, developer might come to you and say that, hey, we need to check some backward compatibility. So we need the older version of Docker. So how are you going to install the older version of Docker? I'll tell you. But before that, let's go ahead and verify if the Docker server has been installed successfully or not. So the command Docker version gives you a detailed output of the client and the server that you have configured. If you see here, client, the version is 20.10, but it says that cannot connect to the Docker daemon, meaning we have successfully installed Docker client and server, but for now, or as of now, the client is available, but it is not able to connect to the Docker server. So we have only just installed it, but we haven't started the service yet. If you see here, is the Docker daemon running? So verify that. How do we verify if a service is running in a Linux? Systemctl status Docker. So if you see here, it clearly states that the service is inactive. So let me go ahead and enable the service. Systemctl start Docker and verify the status. See, now the Docker is active and you can see all the logs here. Now let's try the Docker version command. You see now, Docker server, Docker engine, it is a community edition. And the version that we are using is 2010-14. If you want to get the shorter version of this output, then Docker -version. If you see. So yes guys, so with this we have successfully installed Docker. So how to work in a Docker, how to build Docker images, and how to install Docker in the Ubuntu operating systems, I'll do that in the next video. But before I close this session, let me show you how do we install the older version of the Docker in case if you need it. So you have this command called yum list. Okay, so with this command you will be able to list all the packages available in a given repository. Sorry, it is yum. Yum list docker-ce. So as of now it is showing us one package which is 1014, but let me further execute the command. So if you see here, I said show duplicates and I'm sorting it with the release names, and these are all the versions that we have. Okay, so if you want to install any version, let's say I want to install this one, so I'll select docker-ce 20.10.8, which will go ahead and install this version. And if you observe, the current version of Docker that I am using is 20.10. But if I want, so all of these are 20.10. Yeah, like if you see here 19.3, or within 20.10 you have the minor versions as well, 7, 6, 5, 4, whichever is convenient to you, whichever is needed, you can go ahead and install. So yeah, thank you guys. In the next video I'll show you how to install Docker in a Ubuntu server.